About 6 months ago, we had two brothers, Sean and Martin Tracey, on the show. They were campaigning and part of a large campaign to save the Sperrin Mountains from a gold mine and a mining company called Dalridian, a Canadian company. Since then, our numbers have doubled and the campaign has increased and built itself up as well. But we did tell the lads at the time we'd like to have them back in 6 months' time to see where they are at. And they're joining us tonight. We know that we've got a lot of viewers that we didn't have before and followers watching. So we're going to go over some old ground again about why the Tracey brothers and why the community up in the mountains don't want a gold mine. Are you there, Sean and Martin?
Yes, Finbar. Good evening, Finbar.
Thanks very much for joining us. Lads, there's gold in them there hills. That's how I started your last interview. Just to brief people again that this Canadian gold mine started exploring about 10 years ago. They've done some groundwork. Their proposals, you believe, will be very damaging to your community in many different ways. Could you maybe fill us in on why you feel your community would not benefit overall from this gold mine?
I think, Finbar, the particular reason now what we would be concerned and why we would be against this proposal is this will be, if they get the go-ahead, the largest and deepest gold mine in Western Europe. And this all is going to take place 1,200 metres from the village in the local primary school and preschool, even closer to other houses belonging to families within the area. It sits between two prominent rivers which supply the drinking water for over 41,000 people. And as I say, all you have to do is look around the world to see what gold mining brings to areas. They don't bring nothing of benefit. They don't bring this fabled economic success that they talk about. You know, it's got to the stage now, if you watch the media, that as third world countries are kicking these guys out because there's no benefit to the communities and everything else. If anything else, what we've seen is they've come in here and they've run roughshod over the locals and their opinions. And it seems to be the government and the departments and the powers that be and the politicians are quite happy to get into bed with these guys at the expense of the communities.
And how are the major political parties in the north of Ireland responding to your campaign? How is Sinn Féin and the DUP and the Alliance and all them? Do you think they're on your side?
To be honest with you, Finbar, they couldn't actually be any quieter. The DUP, Sinn Féin, SDLP, Alliance, UUP, this is that big a hot potato for them that they won't even mention it. There was an incident last week whenever there was a number of covert cameras put up around the area and Strabane and Derry Council area. Number of the MLAs who will be up for election next May or whatever date it is, jumped on the bandwagon, were so concerned, but whenever they found out that it was actually associated to what Deridian was doing, they went back in onto their rocks again. And the sad thing about this is this community's been doing this for 5 years. And in relation to the political parties, they've been non-existent. As I say up here, jokingly, their silence is deafening.
Okay. And have you any political support at all there?
Well, mainly we have a lot of support from the independents. You have people before profit. You know, the people that really represent communities and working class communities. We have our own, from Mallinoma District Council, there's a number of excellent independent councillors was able to get seats there at the last election. You have Strabane and Derry District Council. We have Paul Gallagher, who apparently now is going to stand actually for the MLA position at the next election. Now, that is something massive because at the end of the day, we all know how hard a worker the independents are. And for them to pick up, say, a seat in Stormont or whatever else, at least you know your voice is going to be heard. It's not going to be hidden behind a rock or a brown envelope or a wad of £50 notes, if you know what I mean.
Is it deflating as a community when your concerns are about the health of your children? You did speak before about the how near the chemical processing was to your community and to your schools. Is it a great disappointment to your community that political parties like Sinn Féin, like the DUP and all of them appear not to really care?
Very much so, Finbar. It's more than concerning. It puts fears in communities that we have now seen that this company has come in, it's waving money about, it's waving promises about, and the political parties, as I say, they've gone deaf to the pleas of the communities for support and help. What we're asking for here is a fair shout. Give us the equal respect as they're given to these companies. You know, the political parties have been happy to meet with these companies and everything else, the large parties, but yet when the communities request to meet these people before the last elections, they sent out lists of requests. You know, so many people at a certain location and at a time and everything else. They just made the communities jump through hoops to have their voices heard.
And did those meetings happen?
No. I think as well as that there, Finbar, you know, what we found out, this has been going 5 or 6 years, and we found out at the very, very start was this community here was described as the last Dundian reservation. And the reason being was that it was predominantly nationalist, Republican, you know, a Catholic community. It was probably about 97%. And actually the description came from, it was a unionist politician. And he says, look, he says, lads, the last Indian reservation is your own chiefs that have settled down the river. He says, it's been picked for a reason, that area. There's only one party has control of it. There's not going to be two sides of the community opposing each other. And whenever you look into it, you see that. You actually see that. I know way back there was a senior Sinn Féin, and he was an MP at the time, actually was here to say that they had the political will to push this through in the area and the men on the ground to make sure the locals didn't open their mouth. So that's the thanks that this community has got for supporting that party.
The last time you were on the show, you told us that there was levels of intimidation against community members who were opposed to the mine. Has that changed? Has that worsened? What's happening with that?
I think it's evolved, if anything. Now we have instances where the police are landing marked cars to people's houses late at night, making allegations of different supposed incidents that never took place on the words of these employees of this company. Now, the communities have made counterclaims in the past, numerous counterclaims to the police, and in most instances, they would tell us there's nothing to go on and they wouldn't even take statements from the community. But as I say, in the last week or two, numerous families have been getting visits from the police, basically threatening them from being within the proximity of the mine or their staff, looking even in the direction of the staff.
And what, have they actually tried to take any court cases in relation to?
Funny, just when you mentioned that, Finn, where I was served with summons there the day before yesterday, I think. They're now taking me to court next month for apparently, they're claiming it was criminal damage. Somebody apparently cut 2 cable ties, and they're throwing the full force of the law into trying to convict a member of our community for cutting 10p's worth of plastic. Now,
I was going to suggest maybe they were made of gold, but then again, they could afford that too, couldn't they?
But you see, this is the thing about it. You know, there's been a number of people hit with cars and everything else by members of their staff. At that incident alone, there was a man actually, they reversed the vehicle at speed into him, coped him over the bonnet, and whenever the actual police, we actually, you know, stopped him, because at the end of the day it was a criminal act that he had just done. We actually stopped him. They rang the police whenever they arrived. They neither breath tested him, they neither spoke to him. They just went in, found out that he was working for the company, opened the gate, waved him on and told us to stand back out of the road, and then started taking our information.
Okay. And over the period of the so-called lockdown, as it were, the pandemic, have they progressed with their work in any way, or has there been a stall there?
I think, to be honest with you, Finbar, it's been a big PR coup for them. They're running about claiming to be handing out sanitizer and handing out different things, minibus being available for doctors on call. These guys are vultures. You know, these are the actual, as they say, ideal ambulance chasers. You know, whenever there is serious issues like that, that really plays into their fore. You know, the funny thing was that there was a few months back, they actually gave £50,000 to Marie Curie. You know, that's like, you know, American tobacco giving Marie Curie £50,000, because it's well documented around the world the high incidence of different types of cancers and all associated with gold mining, and especially here where you have the large amount of chemicals and such like that will be involved in it. But not only that, but actually in the rock structure that they're removing from underground.
And near your schools.
1,200 meters from the schools.
Yeah, which is quite shocking in itself. In terms of the activism that your community has been involved in, but also a much broader community. I know that you've had international interest, you've had people from all over Ireland and further abroad getting involved. Is that still happening? Is that campaign still live?
Very much so, actually, Finbar. There's been support. All these community groups work very well amongst each other. And as I say, a lot of support for every campaign through the campaigns. And there's actually recently been now an All-Ireland anti-mining group set up, CAM, Communities Against Injustice in Mining. They're a relatively new group, but they have been set up now with all interested parties throughout Ireland.
Donegal, Cavan, Monaghan,
Because the reality is that Dalridian have been doing a lot of marketing on social media platforms over the last few months, and I've noticed that it would appear they're planning to open mines in the Republic down here as well. And so I think that All Ireland Forum is pretty necessary. Have you heard any news in the grapevine in relation to that?
You see, the thing about that, Finbar, is that these guys don't actually mine. What they are, they're a vulture company. They come in, they claim to find these big deposits of gold, they hype up the value of it, they hype up the work, they hype up the investment for communities, and then they sell it to the highest bidder. Now, they can promise you whatever they want. They move on, and whoever comes in behind them, it's a different scenario. So we made no deal with you, we didn't agree to this. In relation to them south, the way that they're working at the minute is, I think the whole of the island of Ireland is going to be decimated if these guys get to go ahead, because both the political parties in the north and the south are sitting waiting to use this as their foot in the door. They've all said they're open for business, but at the moment there's nothing. There's a small mine outside Omagh. At the minute they can't even raise money hardly to do extraction, whereas these guys is talking billions and millions. And then again, it's the same now. The Talis project apparently down around Waterford and all is kicking off currently, and that's to again detail everything that's in the land on the island of Ireland and sell it to the highest bidder.
Okay, so it was said by, I think it was a Social Democrat TD in the Dáil this week, that the city of Dublin has been abandoned by the government to the vultures and to the so-called cuckoo funds. I think it would be safe to say that the countryside is being abandoned to private interests, like companies like Dalridian again. Would you agree with that it seems to be a complete abandonment at this stage to privatisation?
Sadly, I think, Finbar, it's actually a worse scenario than that. These guys is actively kicking people out of the countryside in relation to, this last number of years they've set up, especially in this area, that, you can't build a house. If your son or daughter builds a house, they have to wait 5 years before they can put in an application for another one. So the whole strategy, and you'll find that that's why they're focusing on Donegal through and down the west coast, is that they're trying to depopulate all these areas, so there's less resistance to what these guys is planning. This is not outback Australia. This is not mainland Canada. 100 kilometres here is a big area in relation to driving. Over there, they could drive 1,000, 2,000, and it's only nothing. It's nothing thought of it. They're coming from big industrialized nations to a very small country where everything's on top of other, and their intentions is to use the same processes as what they're using when they fly in workers to the outback Australia, to man-made towns at a gold mine. And that's the sad thing. This is something that's going to decimate this whole country.
So they're applying a completely different model. When I spoke to you the other day, Sean, you were saying that you had a concern that Dalridian would start driving their projects in a much speedier manner now that the pandemic is lifting to a large degree. What do you think they're going to do, and what response are you going to give them?
I think now they have a lot of ground to make up. Because of the pandemic, they had to cease operations almost. And for these companies, profit is God, so they need to make up ground. So I would say they're going to try and accelerate. They're going to increase their political lobbying, which they've been doing all along anyway, and they're probably going to try and get the politicians to force something through to them. But the community's not going to accept it. We can't accept it. This is our home. They talk about this NIMBYism and everything else. What else do we have? It's our homes. If we can't protect our home, then what's the point of it all? Yeah. So to say the communities will resist whatever they try.
I think there as well, Finbar, that myself, as last number of months, has been, how would you say, in for different questions by the police in relation to false accusations made against me. The last one I was on there was about 2 weeks ago.
In relation to this whole mining thing with already.
Yeah.
Just to be clear, that you wouldn't call peeing on the street 2 weeks ago or something. It was about that.
Okay. Well, they didn't catch me at that, but you know.
we'll say nothing.
But you know, the sad thing about it was whenever I came out of interview, all of a sudden says there's somebody here who wants to speak to you, and I went, right, what did I do now? So they said it was a community sergeant, and the community sergeant actually came along and says, you know, what are we going to, how are we going to sort this out up here? I says, how sort what out? And he says, you know, move this thing forward. And I says, but sure, we've always said what way to do it, you know. And he goes, well, what way do we do it? I says, you know, whatever time yourselves or the companies actually come to the community, and this is the way I put it, and I'm not paraphrasing, we'll either get a wild kicking or you're going to get a wild kicking.
Okay.
You know, so little to say the PSNI officer wasn't too happy to hear that. No. But it's got to the stage now where we have nothing to lose and everything to lose at the same time. Because if this thing moves ahead, not only is the Sperrins, Tyrone, the North, but the island of Ireland is decimated. And that's the sad thing. You have TDs, you have MLAs, you have MPs and everything else, and they can find fault in everything that's happening locally. But at the end of the day, whenever it comes down to it, they don't actually do anything about it. As you say, it's like the vulture funds in Dublin. You know, they'll all highlight it or whatever, but whenever it comes down to it, they're probably mostly shareholders in it, don't they?
Yeah, probably. So what your assessment is, and I just want to be careful with language for yourself, your assessment is that if it came to your members of your whole community being physically assaulted by security firms for these mines and by maybe even elements of state security on behalf, that probably the community would defend itself. I think that's what you're saying, is it?
At the end of the day, Finbar, we've all seen what happened in the Corrib down in Mayo and the gas pipeline and that. This community doesn't want that. This community is very clear in, we want to be left alone.
Yeah.
Leave us alone to live our lives. People have been custodians of this land for generations. They're here to bring their families up as best they can with what they have. And it just comes down to the simple message, leave us alone to get on with our lives.
And even in relation to that, Finbar, your basic human right is to stand up for your family and for your loved ones, for your neighbours and for your friends. You know, this is what people doesn't understand. We didn't ask for this. You know, 5 years ago, a bit more, this was thrown upon us, and we're the ones that's having, it's like anything else, it's like us jumping at the deep end. You know, we're having to learn how to swim and everything, you know, straight away. And that's the sad thing, because as I say, whenever you don't have political representation, you know, you have a lot harder, bigger hills to go up, you know. And, you know, the sad thing about it is, I think that this is only going to get worse in relation to the pressures that this company and the political representatives that support them will be putting on the local troops in relation to the PSNI and whatever else.
But isn't the reality that if we were to personify this as a David and Goliath struggle, you guys being David and the Iridian being the giant Goliath, you guys are doing pretty well, and you haven't even had to cast any stones yet.
Not a single stone.
Yeah.
You know, so I think there's a lot of hope there. If people wanted to find out how things are getting on with you, maybe getting involved, even whatever, just to get information, what would they do?
We have one website. It's don'tmineus, all the one word.com. There's numerous Facebook pages. There's the Greencastle People's Office, the Save Our Sperrins. There's Cameo, Communities Against Mining and OMA. there's
Love Screen.
Love Screen. There's numerous pages that can be found, but if they go to the website don'tmineus.com, there's links to them all there.
Okay.
And just in addition to that, Finbar, too, you know, as yet, this community has not, there hasn't been one window broken by the community. The aggression has all come from the company and the supporters. So, you know, just to set that clear from the outset here, the community is doing an unbelievable job with the pressures that they're under. And, you know, I think that speaks volumes to them. You know, the people are that concerned about their family and friends, yet they're still able to keep their head and fight the fair fight, you know.
It's very commendable.
Can I come in here, Finbar, please?
You can, of course you can, Anna, yeah.
I live here in Longford, and as I'm listening to you, I'm very, very concerned because not many people know that the Longford Down Massif extends from North County Longford into Cavan, Fermanagh, Monaghan, Armagh, and it contains a thread or a vein of gold. And there's plans afoot to start excavating with the possibility of applying for a license to mine for this gold. So the problems that you're encountering there in the Sperrin Mountains is your problem today, but it may well be our problem in the years ahead here in Longford and into Cavan and Monaghan. So that would be a huge concern of mine.
Thanks for that, Anna. Guys, we're just tight for time. We're going to be going back to Anna now in a wee minute anyway. Sean and Martin, Tracey, once again, thanks for joining us. I would encourage people to get as much information as possible by linking in with their campaigns, even possibly getting involved if you feel up to it, remotely or on site. But this is a problem that's going to expand, and we want to keep watching it. Sean, did you want to come in to say something? I saw we moved.
Sorry, Finbar, in relation to that, what Anne was saying, if we stop these guys here, you know, there's numerous other communities on the island of Ireland that will then be the focus upon them. So, you know, this is the big thing. These guys need to be stopped across the island, not just in the Sperrins, in Tyrone. It has to be stopped completely.
Yeah. And that will mean putting a bit of pressure on our public representatives who appear to be in a little bit of a bind between, on the one hand, the lucre of gold, and on the other hand, the health and the well-being of the communities that they're supposed to represent. Sean and Martin, thanks a million for joining us. I have no doubt that we're going to have you back in a few months, hopefully with positive news or a call out or something like that. Have a good night, lads, and again, thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Finbar.
Thank you.